This is a test tryout of creating presentations. Chamba, past, present, and the future. In the past, Chamba was a leading and had a head start from the 1900s, last century onwards. Present post independence, we were slow in absorbing and the developments. Other districts overtook us. Now we are about 50th most backward district in India. Our future, our people are simple, honest with 21st century technologies. We can regain our earlier position and thrive. This presentation outlines the what, why, and how. Read on and join the movement. Over a century ago, we had the second electric powerhouse in India. In 1906, even before Lahore got electricity, we had state hospitals, we had state government schools, we even had a modern museum which has been revamped lately. An efficient and advanced administration with sewage plants, drainage, water supply, fire service, etc. Many respective and effective officers were born from Chamba. However, the senior officers, as per the admission requirement, could never be posted in Chamba proper. But that's a different thing. What are the present situations for Chamba? Let's look at education first. The schooling is fairly poor and is mostly done in Chambiali or the local language. The students are by and large weak in English. They might be able to read it, but talking and speaking colloquial English is the problem. Classes of 10 plus 1 or plus 2. For classes of that, most students study outside Chamba, which costs about 10 to 15,000 per month. Similarly, for colleges, professional colleges, is once our youth go out, they rarely return back, resulting in a brain drain from Chamba, a powerful downward and negative spiral. How do we stop the spiral? These are things. So consequently, we start off with a weak base, and that gets worse as the best people at significant cost leave Chamba and go outside. Typically, once they go outside, they see the more advanced cities and all that, and more better opportunities outside, and they rarely return, causing a brain drain. Besides those who return, even the job prospects in Chamba are not very bright. Healthcare, from talk with meeting people from Chamba, appears to be understaffed, especially with qualified doctors, facilities, etc. Patients are often sent outside to Pathankot, Tanda, etc. Staff avoid being posted to Chamba, especially because of lack of facilities, largely schools, and healthcare, education, and future openings for families. Existing doctors who have stayed on in Chamba and prefer being here, creating and inbreeding an obstacle for newcomers. The work opportunities. Government jobs is not a solution really. Most government jobs are already overstaffed, and there's a tendency for going in for a smaller, leaner, meaner government administration. So that's not a solution anyway. Conventional industry is not economically viable because inputs and markets are outside. Transport costs are uneconomical, hence no manufacturing jobs. So no industries come here, or they are not viable, and there are no manufacturing jobs. The work or job openings in unemployment is rampant. 10th pass students are even forced to become house servants. People need to be trained to become entrepreneurs and not job seekers. and self-employed. Many tourism locations are there, but they are not sufficiently developed and promoted and viable. And even where they have been promoted, skilled manpower is a problem. Let's talk about Chamba the future. Lastly is what? The three broad strategies which we have in mind. One is using IT for e-learning and distance learning, also for logging on to the internet for knowledge transfer, training, collaborative learning, and creating a knowledge base so that the students gradually can start learning. With this thing, they can also be exposed to the internet and learn English, etc. besides Chambiali. They can also build up their own websites or the school websites, and they can have mini websites so they can start marketing their skills and their abilities, etc. Then lastly in IT is healthcare informatics and setting up social networking sites for each panchayat and each department so that they can collaborate online rather than exchanging memos and having weekly conferences through web video conferencing, Google Hangouts, etc. And then is ERP, that is how you actually run your processes of governance at the up to the panchayat level. And these servers, so there will be a server in each panchayat, so inputs can be collected and collated from the thing. So the ERP will cover practically all facets of activities which are currently done by the panchayat, or associated activities which are done in the at the block, tehsil and district headquarters levels. All these computers would be integrated and would be accessible from the blocks as well as from the tehsils as well as from the district headquarters. So data will be entered only once, and it will be entered as the transactions take place, so it will be kept up to date, and that will what will help. So this is the IT part will also help in teaching and training. All people who come inside this project will have to learn about computers, and they'll be exposed to ethical learning through videos as well as e-learning courses. Then they will be taught how to learn using the e-learning software like Moodle. Then they'll also be taught how to use social networks. The social networking software will enable them to create their own websites for their own panchayat, their own schools, or their own various projects, etc. So this would be the main media for exchanging ideas and views and recording it. This will be supplemented by web and video conferencing, like the tools like Google Hangouts, etc. so that they can have meetings, frequent meetings, or they can have impromptu meetings, and those meetings will be recorded and stored. So the efforts of making minutes, etc. come down significantly, and there's better communication and teamwork amongst the team. And lastly, the standard processes for accounting, for project management, for purchasing, for hiring, and for evaluating people's performance, for time booking or keeping a track of how much effort has been done by different people for different processes, etc. Like any other organization. And these will be suitably modified to take care of the government rules and regulations. And some of the government rules and regulations would need to be modified. This ERP system would additionally have modules for planning, rural planning, as well as panchayat planning, as well as keeping an account of the different projects which have been done and tracking them so that they can be handled by exception and follow-up can be done automatically. The panchayat computers would be accessible from tablets, which would be there with the key panchayat members, as well as there would be a local IT trained person who will be able to handle all this and administer them as a supervisor of the panchayat thing. These will be locally trained lads, so this itself will create employment within the village for people who are from the village. And they will be in turn also made into entrepreneurs, which we'll discuss later. So this is the broad structure, and IT is the leading weapon for introducing change within the whole thing. Based upon IT, which also will go in phases, all the information, all the training, all the learning, and all the tracking of their progress of each individual person in the Panchayat will be done through the computer. And so that way you could have literally an online census going on by tracking the activities. And these computers will be accessible at different levels: the block, the tehsil, the district, and even state headquarters or from Delhi, the center. So they will be getting reliable, timely information which has been entered at the transaction point. And when the transactions are entered, there will be an accountability about the people who are allowed to enter the transaction, and they will be suitably trained so that they are accountable for the input which goes into the system. So the scope of misuse comes down significantly, especially with an online ERP system, which is what is invisible. While, the second leg of the stool is CSP. CSP stands for concentrated solar power. In this one, roughly a 40 square meter mirror area will be made available, will be fabricated. The kits will be made, so the large part of the fabrication can be done by the villagers themselves with about a few months of training. And they will be fabricating things as well as managing things. So that way they'll generate employment in the villages, and technical employment, not just road building and digging and manual work, but they will be learning how to build solar plants themselves. The designs here are open source, so it will be possible to replicate this thing. And once we have a train, based on our initial estimates, the cost of those kits will be about 3 lakhs for a 3 kilowatt thing, and this will be assembled locally and fabricated locally. The kits will initially probably be made in industrial areas, but there is scope that this becomes a cottage industry also. So the villagers themselves can start making the kits or parts of the kits, something like the way the Nano was built. You outsource, you initially do everything in-house, and then you gradually make them into kits, and then people start making the sub-assemblies, etc. themselves with tooling. So this will give a flip to fabrication and similar industries within the village, and create employment of skilled people and build up their skills also. We estimate that for assembling a kit would take about 4 to 5 man months, and the people for doing the assembling work can be trained in about a month or two. For making the fabrications, etc., might take longer because it needs skills of metalworking, welding, etc. But there is no reason why this cannot be done locally. So the idea is essentially to not only to have solar plants, but also to impart the skills and train the people so they can handle it themselves. So you're empowering them in doing that. Then once the solar plants are ready, parts of them will, let's say a steam engine or a Stirling engine, these will have to be manufactured outside in suitable environments, and they will not be locally made. Once this is erected, it's forecast that each of these 40 square meter mirror areas can generate about 3 kilowatts using steam engines. The waste heat of the steam engine will be used for solar refrigeration. That means using the absorption cycle of heating ammonium hydroxide solutions to produce the refrigerator effect. Some of you might have remembered that in the 50s, Electrolux had those plants which were powered by a small kerosene wick lamp, and they were able to run a refrigerator. So something like that would be developed and can be developed and used for refrigeration, for the heat after it comes out of the refrigeration will be used for steam cooking for midday meals and community meals, etc. And then the remaining heat will be used for condensing it and used for space heating, for heating the houses or the offices in winter. And these with the result that a lot of practically all the heat of the collectors will be converted and used usefully. Typically a 40 meter square reflector can generate about 40 kilowatts of energy. So 3 kilowatts would probably be going through for generating the electric power, probably another about 6 or 7 kilowatts for refrigeration and for cold storage, etc. And then the remaining for say maybe another 5 kilowatts for midday meal cooking, and the remaining would be used for heating of the spaces, etc. So this is, by this method, not only will we make the village energy independent, but there would be scope as people get familiar with how to fabricate it, that we can start off maybe with one solar CSP plant in each village, and if there are about 10 or 15 houses or maybe more in the village, each house can theoretically have a small solar plant on top of the roof. So in case after the first plant is done and the people debug it and they understand how to do it, we can make building CSP plants as a continuous activity till all the 10 roofs are there, and that will generate enough surpluses. We've estimated that one such plant will generate about 1 lakh of revenue every year. So if you got 10 plants going on, we can generate even about 10 lakhs. And then the village can become an exporter of electrical energy to the rest of the grid. And we may certainly substitute this for thermal energy by fossil fuels, which cause global warming, etc., or nuclear fuels, as well as from hydrofuels, which are those big dams are expensive, they have gestation period, and in all this time we will be generating employment in a decentralized way in the village itself. So they empower them, and once they get empowered and understand this thing, they can go in for decentralized small-scale manufacture using advanced technologies, not just low-skill thing, but they can use some of these are already being developed in developed countries like open source ecology, etc. So this is the second part of the mechanical part of it. The third part is aquaponics. Uh, the bulk of the people, actually, if you see, if say in a community, about 5% people across locations, etc., are innately brilliant. They're genius level almost. The next another 10 to 15% are excellent material, and then you've still got another about 20% people which can pick up white collar work and knowledge work, etc. So you're talking about nearly about 30 to 40% of the people will be in a position to learn skills and knowledge and continue learning that. Then you probably have another about 30-40% who are good at manual kind of work, or like say they can build CSP plants or they can weld and all this stuff. So they need not be limited, very suited for this thing, but they could do a good job of that. Then you'll have another about 30% who are good, but they are probably, they can be definitely utilized for making actual labor and doing agricultural work. So this way we are trying to make the entire village productive. So because even if one or two people in the village do not have productive jobs, they'll be idle, they'll be a drain to the village economy, and an idle mind, as they say, is the devil's workshop. So they'll resort to mischief. So it will be the onus of any village to become like a one big large family. And like in a family, there are different people with different skill levels, but there's a patriarch on top who at least try to govern and control it. So this way, the sarpanch or something that will have a role of doing that. In addition, that he will also try to see that whatever plans have been talked about are run properly. So this is how manpower will be deployed for the village. Now, let's talk about the IT part of it. Okay. So IT will probably be able to absorb about 30% eventually of the village population. Another 30% could be used fruitfully for fabrication and developing tools, etc., like CSP, etc. The last maybe 20-30% can be used for agriculture. Now, besides conventional agriculture, which they are already familiar with, a lot of work has been done in the past 20-30 years on advanced organic-based, self-sustaining, recyclable agriculture called aquaponics. That's a big name, but to make it simple to understand, what you do is you dig up a pond, maybe about 1 meter deep, and stock it up with fish and of course water. You feed the fish food based on agricultural waste and all that stuff. So the fish eat that food and they get fat and put on weight. And they excrete. The waste, if it's not carried away or cleaned up, gradually dirties the water and poisons the water, and the fish die. So to avoid that, this dirty fish water actually is a ideally suited resource, and it can be recycled. So we put that dirty fish water, pump it out, or let it flow out into a bioreactor, which converts the poisonous waste into plant food. And the water which is rich now in plant food, is then goes to another tank which has got thermocol based lettuce plants and similar other vegetable plants, etc., who are not in soil, but their roots are just hanging out and they're floating on the thermocol rafts. And those roots which are hanging out dip into this nutrient rich water and they suck up all the nutrients. So in the process of sucking up the nutrients, the bioreactor converts the fish waste into nutrient rich water. The plants remove the nutrients and they grow. And because of the efficiency of the system, the rate of growth is significantly higher in an aquaponic system than in normal food. Besides that, you do not need so-called fertile land. This can be done, these rafts and tanks can be built even on rocky soil or whatever it is. So you don't need this. So, and then when the plants pick up all the nutrients, they grow, and they grow at a faster rate, and they can be also put in a polyhouse, etc. And then the water is cleaned, and the clean water comes back to the fish tank. So you're essentially recycling the water. 80% of the fresh water which humans need in the planet Earth is used for agriculture. If we recycle it, we can bring it down to about maybe 15, 20 or 30%. And then about 2/3 of India's agriculture is based on monsoon fed farming. And you've seen the vagaries of the monsoon. Now if we have this thing, we can avoid these vagaries and learn how to store the water and water harvest it, so that we start filling up our aquifers and we can grow food without too much water needed. So this way we have a recyclable system altogether, and they can produce high grade food which can technically be qualified as organic food, which has got a high value, etc. So we've seen that with the three-legged stools, we can do this thing. Now to support this entire project and this entire method of doing it, we need information technology, and processes will be suitably redesigned from scratch to collect the data using the progress already made by Adhaar and all that stuff to make streamlined systems which are real time and online and use ERP kind of controls for better management, etc. This whole thing has been planned, if you notice, that any human habitation will have sun, it will have some water, and so this can be, whether it's up in the Himalayas, maybe in Leh and Ladakh even, or in the heated plains of Rajasthan, or in Punjab. These models can be made to work. And for getting IT to any of the villages, etc., the panchayats are all going to be linked up in a year or two with a 2 Mbps link. So the servers in each panchayat would be housing their ERPs, and the same would be shared with the schools of the villages, etc. And the village outsourcing work and work on the computer can be done from any, maybe a small center in each village where you can go. Then could be a common facility which could have midday meals together along with this thing, maybe a part of the school or whatever else it is. So you can see that this entire ecosystem can be self-sustaining. It can be financed largely by the outputs of the village when they produce the electricity, as well as other produce, as well as when they outsource and do outsource work for other places. When I was in Chicago, we used to send work from Chicago all the way to India and Bangalore, etc. This was about 10-15 years back. Why can't we send work away from our crowded cities and reduce the number of people who have to go to cities and pass on the workload to the villages and rural areas? This can be easily done through a Wi-Fi network connected to the panchayat, which is anyway going to be connected with a 2 Mbps high bandwidth internet connection. So this is possible. So the villages will gain from exporting some of their vegetables, etc., and other aquaponic outputs. They'll gain from exporting the power. They will also gain from doing outsourced knowledge work. Outsourced knowledge work, if it's totally be handled, and I have experience and expertise in that, the economics are compelling. One is that the children who do this thing, or the people who do this thing, they can do it from their own homes, and they can stay in their own homes. So the people who have got that aptitude with 30% which we are talking about will be essentially staying in the same village, living in the same village, so their brains and drains are available to them. And the cost is cost effective also, because to the cost of living in the village, let's say this of an equivalent lifestyle, you would have to pay the people in the cities or in the towns about 15-20,000 rupees, and that work can be done by somebody getting even 5,000, because his cost of living is coming down. And not only that, there's no brain drain from the village. So when his spare time, he can start working on other projects, other knowledge-based jobs. He can teach, he can do this thing and all that stuff. So basically, we are switching from an agricultural economy, bypassing the industrial economy and going straight into a knowledge economy. So the village is going to be self-sustaining, and for transport, etc., instead of using fuel, they can have electric vehicles which can be charged up by the solar plants, and their entire lighting, etc., or load for computers can be driven from the 5 kilowatt being generated, and the heating load will be done from the rest of the solar heat, as we've explained. So this way they become a net exporter of energy. They also will be able to earn money by outsourced work, which they can do at a more effective place. And then they can also learn by exporting their vegetable products, etc. Now with all this export, they can import whatever things are not viable or economically viable to be made in the village or that region. The transportation can be done via electric vehicles, and for long distance you can use trains, etc., and all this stuff. A good road work has already been built in Himachal, so that's a big help. So you can see that this whole thing can be made highly sustainable, and through proper e-learning methods, systems, processes, and training, it can be monitored and managed properly. And it can be run through ERP systems, and the people in the village themselves can be trained for developing and running these systems. That would be all. Thank you. We are running out of time and resources to continue with the present approach of development, especially aping the West. We would need at least 3 or 4 more planets over the size of Mother Earth to continue our population explosion from a billion a century back to 5 billion, 15 billion in a few decades' time. Some issues: population growth, rising expectations and inequalities, unrest in grabbing resources, wars in that, global warming, food shortages, fresh water shortages, pollution, decimation of a non-human species, etc. And there's many, many more which you can certainly think of. As Gandhiji said, the earth has enough for everyone's needs, but not for man's greed. Man can only survive if he lives in harmony with the other species of animals and plants in a sustainable ecosystem. Remember, spaceship design, nature had no waste bin, so we have to recycle everything or cart it to another planet, which will cost a lot of money. And obviously, it doesn't make sense. How is it possible? Yes, we are short of time, a generation or two at the most. We need to ignite home for the hopeless and for the poor. An outline of the common feasible approach which will cover 70% of the globe. This can be customized and adapted to meet local needs. The main technologies are IT, CSP, aquaponics, etc. We've already covered. We covered this. We've covered how aquaponics works, why it makes a difference, the transformation process. That's it.